Great, so let's begin. My name is Laura, for those of you who are new to this food from home community, and I'm the population health strategist with the Bow Valley Primary Care Network. As you can see on the slide here, we created this food from home initiative in partnership with the town of Canmore and with support from the Bow Valley Food Alliance. We also gratefully acknowledge the Banff Canmore Community Foundation for providing funding so that we were able to purchase grow kits, and the Bow Valley Garden Center for helping us to make that happen. And of course, it's important to acknowledge that we are living and working and growing here on Treaty 7 lands where past, present, and future generations of Stoney Nakoda, Blackfoot, and Tsuut'ina nations have lived, traveled, gathered here for generations, along with those of Métis Region 3. And we want to make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we currently reside on. So before starting, for those of you here in real time, there is some webinar housekeeping. As it will be recorded, only the panelists are visible and able to speak out loud. So please use the question and answer section for your questions and the chat box for all other discussion, as it helps us stay a little bit more organized. And we'll post this on the Food from Home Facebook group and on the PCN's new YouTube channel by early next week. All right, enough of me. Let's get on to our presenter today, who is my lovely coworker, Zarifa, a registered dietitian with the PCN that is passionate about really all things food. So Zarifa, I will stop sharing my screen and take it away.
Amazing. Thanks, Laura and crew, for having me. Let me just share my screen because that is always better. Try 3. Success. Amazing. So yeah, my name is Zarifa. I'm a dietitian. And today we're going to talk a bit about eating or working with hopefully some of the food you've been able to grow from your grow kits. So why do we even think about growing and eating fresh foods? I put convenient as a first thought because it's convenient because it's like right outside of your door, on your patio, on your windowsill, whatever. But it's potentially less convenient because you have to like make it grow or try and keep it alive. So I guess there's yes and no's to the convenient aspect of it. But it can be super cost effective growing your own food. Hopefully you found it to be fun and enjoyable. I did not get a grow kit, but I have a small patch of dirt beside my house that I attempt to grow things in. And like attempt is the key word. I think I'm on round 3 of radishes right now. And like, I don't know, either it's the soil or the seed, or I suck at growing radishes, which are supposed to be an easy food to grow. So who knows? We'll might have to pick somebody else's brain. But why do we try to eat a lot of fresh foods? Well, they're really nutritious, they're good for us. Besides, you've probably heard of macronutrients, so like proteins, carbs, and fat. Food is always made up of a combination of those things. But beyond that, we have things called micronutrients. So those are all the vitamins and minerals. These things tend to promote your health. They're actually critical for your body to function. And then there's something called phytonutrients as well, which you might be less familiar with, but they're essentially all of these like really tiny components of food that function as like antioxidants. They fight inflammation, they promote your neurons. So think like cellular level, the foods we eat can promote health at that level. And so if you can grow it and eat it, that's good stuff. There's a comment here about food as an army. And so that is this idea of like food functions together. So we don't want to just eat, you know, carrots for the rest of our lives, or just chicken or whatever. We want to eat like different colored vegetables and fruit, different types of proteins, different types of grains, just eating a variety of it because they work together in your body and to promote your health. Herbs specifically, I kind of wanted to go on a tangent on herbs and kept having to remind myself that you guys do have other things in your grow kit. So I did try to talk about those as well. But herbs are great because, well, they enhance the flavor of your food. Super delicious. They have a lot of these phytonutrients in them that we just talked about and micronutrients. And they can, make your food better without having to rely on the other common things that we use to enhance flavors, which would be salt, sugar, and fat. The ideas around harvesting might be a little late because hopefully you've already been harvesting, but there's a few thought groups, so I thought I would just touch base on them. Thinking about lettuces, do you cut and come again? So like just chop the whole thing and it grows? Do you pull out the outer leaves? I'm part of the community garden and I asked different people and they gave me opposite answers very confidently. So one had a little more context to it and I think, it made sense to me. So early season or when the plant is young, it's a good idea to pull off the outer leaves. If you have enough plants growing, you want to pull, a couple leaves from each plant to promote the growth of each of these plants. The cut and come again is helpful later in the season or like when your plant is older. If it looks like it's bolting, starting to flower, or it's just really massive and you have tons of it, then cutting the whole thing would be appropriate. But again, if you think about like how the plant grows, it's using the sun. When the leaves are all gone, it just makes it so much harder to do that. So lettuce harvesting kind of depends on what your scenario is and how much you have, but those are a few things you could think about. Herbs. Turns out herbs love to be pruned early and often. So obviously it's going to depend on what you're growing, how you harvest it. I went on a little exploration about basil because I have basil. Enter basil. And it's not supposed to look like this, I learned. And Lou's laughing at me. So that's really good. If you want your basil plant to be like bushy and not all over like mine is about to do, you need to prune it, so actually harvest, and not just like pull some of the leaves off. So if you count from the bottom of your plant, so you can see, I'll count up 3 like growth nodules, and this one seems pathetic, so I'm going up to a 4th one. You actually literally want to cut here. And when you cut right above the little, spot where it splits, so I've cut this off, now I have to use it. But by cutting it in this spot, like right above the new growth, it's gonna force my plant to essentially divide. And so it's gonna go bushier, but it's also gonna be twice as big. So I'm excited, and I'll let at least Lou know if that's productive or not. So fun facts about basil: you're looking for it to be bushy, you need to prune it. The more you cut it back, the more it's actually going to produce. Something like cilantro or parsley, these you can, again, same concept as with the lettuce, kind of depends on your quantity. If you had just a massive amount of these herbs in your garden, you could totally just, somebody said, lawn mow them. So just like cut them all off and they'll come back. But typically, and usually in the quantities that we're growing at our houses, we would just pinch off some of the outer stems. So kind of go pretty close to the root and just, you could pinch it with your nail or you could like cut it off. And again, pull a few from every plant so that you're not over harvesting one plant. Same thing if you were like growing oregano, chives, just cut them at the base and they'll keep growing. They're a pretty hardy, resilient plant that once you plant in your garden, if you leave it there, it'll come back next year. So that's exciting. You do have a few little root vegetables too, I think, radishes and carrots growing. Pretty straightforward. Grab it at the base or the top of the vegetable, the base of the greenery, and then just pull up. Usually when I've harvested like carrots or something at the community garden, they're like small enough that, you just pull and out it comes. But they have grown some incredible carrots this year that are like whatever 9 inches long and like really round. So you really have to make sure you're grabbing the actual carrot and not just like pulling on the greens, otherwise you rip them off. Spinach, this person is confidently cutting the whole thing. Again, cut and come again, depends on the quantity that you have. Typically what I have found best is just to pull off some of the outer leaves to promote growth on all of your little plants. So let's say you've harvested and now you want to be using, if you can't get to it right away, honestly, the best thing would be just, if you can, like leave it in the ground as long as you can and then harvest it to use it fresh. But a lot of these things you can store in your fridge as well. So lettuce and spinach, you just wash and dry them. If you put a paper towel with it in your airtight container, it's going to absorb some of that moisture and just keep it fresh longer. Lettuce is not going to freeze well, but spinach, you can freeze, chop it, put it in a sealable bag. Some people really like to blanch their garden harvest. It's supposed to increase the shelf life or freeze life. I don't ever blanch my things before I put them in the freezer, and they seem fine, but maybe future Zarifa will change her mind. Who knows? Root vegetables, obviously you want to pull the greens off of the rest to use. They're going to go bad sooner. You could store them in water as a whole unit, and that could keep them a bit longer, but ideally just use the greens first and then store the carrot radish in the fridge. Again, paper towel seems to be a thing to absorb extra moisture, may or may not be needed depending on your fridge. Yeah, here we go, freezing again, you can do that. Radishes, not entirely certain how well they would freeze just because they have a high water content, but you could try, see how it goes. Just make sure your bag is airtight. Herbs, so you harvest them, you rinse them, dry them. If you wrap them in a paper towel, again, same concept as the lettuce and spinach, it's just going to help absorb the moisture and keep them fresh longer. Homemade crisper, I don't know if anyone has a crisper or has made one. Essentially, we have just like a big Tupperware that we put some, like a kitchen towel in it, so that it absorbs the moisture, and then you can put your half pepper or cut up cucumber or whatever in there without needing 17 small containers or Ziploc bags for everything. So that's a convenient way to keep your fridge a bit tidier as well. The exception on herbs is basil. Don't put basil in the fridge. Basil is super finicky, so we want to keep it at room temperature where it's happiest. If you have a stem, so this guy that I cut, he does, I'm just going to stick it in some water and keep it on the counter. If they were just the leaves, then I would put it in a Ziploc that's a little bit open just to keep it breathable, and again, leave it on the counter. Your fridge lifespan for herbs, it's going to depend on the type and how hardy they are. So something that's a little bit more fragile, delicate, chive, cilantro, they're going to last a number of days. Hardier ones are going to last, a solid week. Rosemary, thyme, these things can last a couple weeks. But of course, if you're growing it at home, you might as well just like cut it and stick it in your food when you need it, instead of bothering to store it in your fridge if you have that luxury. And then freezing them, this is a great option to preserve if you have a lot, or if you inevitably buy at the grocery store and you have like so much cilantro you don't know what to do with it. You can chop it, put it into your ice cube trays, cover it with water or stock, and then once they're frozen, pop them into a bag. Or I would just cut them up and stick them in a container and pop it in the freezer and then dump them into my stir fry or curry or whatever I'm making. How to use some of these products. Lou already talked to you guys about this a couple months ago, I guess, but with your root vegetables, I mean, you can eat your carrots or cook with them. Carrots are versatile, and I'm sure you've all explored with those a bit. Carrot tops, a little bit more unique. You can make a pesto with it, put it into a stock. If your leaves are pretty small, like you chop it up and put it into a salad. The older the plant, the coarser the leaves, the tougher they'll be. And so you kind of want to think about that as you gauge whether you're going to eat them raw or cook them. I find if you make a pesto, it's a little tedious, but if you pull off all the leaves off the stem, it does make for a much better consistency than if you just put the whole stem into the food processor. Not super delicious that way, I find. Radish tops, again, if they're small and young, those are good, like little microgreens. Put them in your salad or sandwich or whatever. The older they get and the bigger they get, you might notice they get a little bit fuzzy. So that's a little off-putting for people to eat raw. But again, toss it into your soup, stew, stock, whatever you wish. And Lou had a little recipe for veggie scrap broth, which literally you just keep all the scraps of your vegetables, like your onion peel and your carrot peels and your like carrot tops and all these things, stick them in a bag in the freezer. And once the bag is full, dump it in a pot, pour some water on it, salt and pepper or peppercorns and parsley and a bay leaf, simmer, ta-da, you made your own broth. Brilliant. Herbs, again, super versatile. They're gonna be great flavor enhancers to your food. So you can put them on your sandwich or in your stir fries or on your eggs or on your vegetables. You can put basil or mint into your water. If you muddle it up, it's gonna release the flavor and taste better. Jazz up your pasta sauce. Wow, more about vegetables. You can put this on meat as well. Not trying to be anti-meat here. And you can put all of these things, specifically like basil, parsley, chives, dill, into a salad or into a salad dressing. And so I'm going to demo a little salad dressing for you, but please bear with me because my kitchen is over there.
I feel like we should have prepared elevator music or something for this transition. Oh, that's enough for me.
And of course, because no setup at home is ever amazing, please enjoy my background desk, and I'm gonna try and point it towards my desk here. So, how do you make a salad dressing? It's the easiest thing, and I forgot my one slide that I actually want to show you about what you should put in your salad dressing. Got excited. So homemade salad dressing. If you haven't made it, would highly recommend because it's incredibly easy. And you probably have all of these ingredients on hand, and it tastes a lot better, in my opinion, than the ones from the store. Plus, you get to save fridge space because you can just whip up your own variety and have it for 1 or 2 salads, not, I don't know how many salads you get out of those large bottles that you can get at the store. But what do you need for your dressing? 3 critical things: an oil, you need an acid, and some other kind of flavor. So oils, they say use it in a 60% oil, 30% acid, 10% other flavor. This is a guide. I don't usually measure my salad dressings, but today I will. But you can always modify based on the ingredients that you're using. So oils, we're thinking like extra virgin olive oil, avocado, walnut, flax, rapeseed, canola, sesame, any are fine. My go-to is olive oil because it's so good for us, and I think it tastes the best. An acid, balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar, red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, cherry, lemon juice, lime juice, rice vinegar. There's so many options. Kind of pick what you want. Probably wouldn't use just white vinegar because it's boring, but that's my opinion of that. And then other flavors, think like mustard, garlic, chopped up shallots, different herbs, soy sauce, a jam, lots of options kind of depending on what you have and the flavor that you're going for. And then the standard, you would always include like salt and pepper, maybe not salt if you're using soy sauce, but make sure there's a little bit of salt in there, some pepper. And then if you're using something super acidic, pretty much all of them, I would use a little bit of one sweetener or another just to help balance out the acid. If you're using balsamic vinegar, it does have a little bit of sugar in it just by way of its production. So you would need less sweetener than if you're using apple cider, for example. So I'll stop sharing now so you can see this. There it is. Okay, so pretty straightforward. I have olive oil that I'm going to use. I'm literally going to put this in a mason jar. So I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of oil. Again, if you wanted to make more dressing, then you make more, but just think in the ratios of like roughly 60% of what you're making should be 60% should be in oil. And then you can't actually see that. Then we'll do balsamic because that's what I have in my house. And I'll do 1.5 of those. Like a half. For flavor enhancers, so there's lots of options. I have some garlic that I'm gonna press. If you don't have a press and you don't feel like chopping, you can use, oh, that worked really well. I dropped this, or actually I broke it trying to press ginger the other day. Turns out it wasn't the best option. Anyways, if you don't have a garlic press, you could just put dried garlic in there as well. So that's great. Any kind of mustard will do. You pick. This is bold and spicy. So actually, I don't feel like using it. I have tiny amounts of parsley from the garden. Looks a little sad, but it's going to be great. And so I'm just going to chop that up like pretty fine. And you could put any kind that you want in there. Depends on what you're going for. But this is my 10%. Close enough. She's looking like this. Looks like more than 10% flavor enhancer, but that's okay. Put some salt in there. And a little bit of pepper. And just to take a bit of the edge off, I'm going to put literally just a drop of maple syrup in there. Maybe. And then depending on what you have, you can just like use a fork to whisk. I'm going to shake this guy. You could also make it in like a blender, like a magic bullet or something like that. and then it would stay together better, like it wouldn't separate as easily. So look at that. We have, I'm gonna get a spoon to show you just this lovely dressing that looks a little chunky, but it's got parsley in it and it's homemade and it's delicious. And you could give it a taste, and depending on, you know, if it's too acidic, then you could add in a little more oil. If it's too oily, then add in a little bit more acid. It's totally up to you. World's your oyster. So pretty simple. If you don't use it up, you can literally stick it in your fridge and it will store for like a long time. Maybe with the fresh herbs, less long. But if you're just using like garlic powder, oil and vinegar, salt and pepper, mustard, like easy a week or two, it'll be fine. Probably it's gonna separate and the oil will get hard. So you just have to think about that, take it out like as you're prepping your salad, or if you need to, you can stick it in the microwave for like 5 seconds even. Often I'll like, if I forget about it, I just put it beside my stove, and then even the heat from that and a good shake, boom, you're ready to go. Okay, that was not 60 minutes, but that's all I have to tell you. Those are my tips and tricks on enjoying your harvest. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them, but also happy to chat all things food with people outside of this conversation tonight.
I have a question, Zarifa.
Yeah.
Have you ever dried the herbs that you've grown?
Yeah, great question. Forgot about that. Drying herbs is super easy. So that's definitely an option. Literally same thing. You wash them after you've harvested it, make sure you dry it well. And then you can lay it out like on paper towel is probably the best, on a cookie sheet. And if you're in the summer or in sunshine, you could have it out and it'll dry like that, or you can stick it in the oven and it'll at like a super low temperature and it'll dry that way. Yeah, totally. You can also tie them, that's the word I'm going for, in a bunch, and then hang them and they'll dry like that. And that's another fun way to use it. Great question, Lou.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. More? Does Pesh have a question?
That work from home life, eh? We're really representing food from home, work from home. Anytime around supper, she's just wild.
Ready for you.
So I apologize, but also you're welcome for getting the entertainment on the side of a cat being very whiny. I can't think of any questions right now, which is weird from me, but I am definitely excited to try making my own salad dressing. You'd think that I would have by now, you know, knowing you, but I still haven't. And it's ridiculous. Everybody should try making their own salad dressing. It seems, now that I've seen you demo it, it's so simple. I have no excuse.
Let me know how it goes. The fun thing is that if you end up making like more an Asian style salad with Napa cabbage and carrots and cubes and stuff, you can use rice vinegar and your oil with some soy sauce and ginger, and you have like an Asian flair on your dressing. It's just super versatile, and you probably have a lot of the things in your cupboard already. And if you don't, getting a few extra staples, not the worst idea.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Zarifa. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A. Let me double check the chat. Nothing there either. In that case, I think we bid adieu this month and keep the conversation going on our Facebook group. Bow Valley Food from Home.
Amazing. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
See ya.